that we have with us 3 illustrious guests, 4 illustrious guests from the Masaktash movement, women that wouldn't keep their mouths shut, and we're very grateful for all 4 of you being here, as well as Soufiane. I'm not leaving Soufiane out. Soufiane is coming too. I'll introduce him next. But first of all, we have with us 4 women, as I mentioned, Leila Selassie, who is a lawyer and a member of the Paris Bar. She's a founding partner of Africa Advisors in Casablanca, and the exclusive correspondent of Mayer Brown, a global American firm. She specializes in business and tax law, and she is co-founder of the Masaktash movement, founded to combat violence against women and the rape culture in Morocco. She's also a member of the board of Tafra, a think tank that conducts and publishes applied research on questions relating to the rule of law. She is a graduate of La Sorbonne. So Leila, we are delighted to have you with us this evening. Please welcome Leila. And now it's Maria. Maria Karim is an artist, graduated from l'École des Beaux-Arts de Casablanca and Aix-en-Provence. She's also co-founder of the Masaktash movement. She's an activist on matters relating to human rights and freedom of speech, and has been a coordinating member of Defense on behalf of prisoners of conscience. Maria's artwork was initially centered around audiovisual productions and has evolved during the past 5 years to include painting. She's preparing an exhibition to be displayed during the first quarter of 2019. I hope it will be here. Thank you, Maria, for being with us. Please welcome Maria. We have next Aida Alemi, a freelance journalist who covers North Africa. She regularly contributes to the New York Times, Al Jazeera English, Foreign Policy, the Financial Times, USA Today, and Bloomberg, among others. She grew up in Marrakesh and moved to New York City at the age of 18, has a BA in Media Studies from Hunter College and a Master's in Journalism from Columbia University. She's a member of the Associated Reporters Abroad and on the advisory board of the 2014 Peabody Award winner, Round Earth Media. Aida, thank you for being with us. I don't have a blurb on Zainab Belmoqdam, but I am delighted to have Zainab here. We are really lucky that she is here with us because she's also one of the early founders of the Masaktash movement, and is now based in Washington, D.C., and is an activist for human rights there. I'm sure that Zainab will tell us more about what she does because I don't get to read her impressive resume to you. But we really are fortunate that she just happens to be in Morocco right now and accompanied her colleagues, sisters, to be with us tonight. So Zainab, thank you so much for making this. And finally, before I turn the floor over to our women guests, I want to introduce our man guest as well, who will then make a separate presentation about his work, Soufiane Saoudi. Soufiane is founder of the Youth Empowerment Society, YES, in Tiflet, Morocco, and works there as a reporter. YES is an independent youth initiative, and their vision is based on creating society that gathers young people together to enable them to exchange expertise and skills in the domain of debate by spreading the culture of dialogue. They also aim to embed the principles of democracy and gender equality by working on women's empowerment projects such as Let Your Voice Be Heard. So yet again, it is certainly appropriate for Soufiane to be with us. Thank you so much, Soufiane. And now I'm going to turn the panel over to our guests from Masaktash. So you can now present yourselves and your own work.
Thank you very much. And I really want to thank the organizers of this event. It's very important to create this platform where we can all discuss these topics that are usually, discussed just between few people or between few friends. And we are very happy at Massachusetts to be part of it and to join you for this first day. You're gonna excuse my English, which is not my mother language. So I'm gonna do my best to share my ideas and our experience with you, but excuse the few mistakes I can make. So my name is Leila Sassi. This woman is extraordinary. We were friends. And one day we were scrolling our Facebook. It happened that we received this news about this young lady you probably heard about called Khadija. She's 17 years old, lives in Ouladiyat. She had been kidnapped, raped by more than 12 guys during 2 months, and tattooed all over her body. When I first read this news, I was terrified, and I continued the day as if it was like one other news that you have to deal with. But it stayed there the whole day. So at 6 o'clock, I called Maria and I told her, Maria, did you hear about this woman? I mean, this young girl, it's crazy. And she said, yeah, I saw that, and what can we do? I mean, so we just decided that day, it was Saturday, to go to her, to try to connect with them, and just to go and see her, to tell her, you're not alone, we're here with you, and tell us what we can do to help. This is how everything began. It was a few months ago, 2 months ago. So the day after, so the same night, we got the phone number of her father, we called him, and the day after we were there with them. We found a wonderful, wonderful young lady, absolutely, I mean, with a courage and a resilience that made us looks completely stupid. We were expecting someone to be like, she was strong, and she was strong. She had a lot of courage. She shared her experience, but we didn't want to go into detail. So we spent the whole day, and after that, we committed with her, like supporting committee to help them with the health procedure, try to find some doctors who will see her and initiate this process. We turned out to follow this case very carefully because it was our friend, our sister, and we noticed how this case was explained in the media, and we were kind of really shocked about what we were reading, all the comments. It was very weird. It was weird because at the beginning you had this strong support around her. Everybody was like mobilized. Everybody wanted to help. This family received thousands of phone calls, and suddenly you had this video of a woman saying that all the tattoos were old and that she was lying. So it was perfect actually, because everybody was like, oh, it doesn't exist. This doesn't exist. So everybody turned out against her. So we decided to just with Twitter. I was new on Twitter actually. It wasn't my favorite social media tool. I was more a Facebook kind of girl. But I decided like to activate my Twitter account and start tweeting, sharing articles that were positive. Very quickly we were like approached by some media journalists who wanted to hear more, especially foreign journalists who wanted like, to write about her. And we helped the family coordinate all this media around her and try to identify the journalists who will cover the case with a lot of bienveillance and without trying to use that for other purposes. And in the middle of it, we realized that the problem was bigger than Khadija, that the problem was bigger than Ouladiyat, that the problem was bigger than Morocco, that actually the problem was in all our minds, that we accepted because it's in our like daily way of in our daily behavior to just keep these things silent or to be like to feel this malaise around everything related to women's violence, and this silence allow the rapists and allow the aggressors to like continue what they do because nobody says anything. says not. I mean, there's nothing to say actually. So with Maria, we were like thinking about expanding this little group. We were like 4 of us, Maria and I and 2 other friends, like identifying everything related to Khadija and trying to fight this very negative comments on her. And then we just decided to set up a larger group with 12 people and to organize some tweet sessions around harassment, around violences towards women, and just to spread the word, to just educate a little bit, just to talk about it. Because this silence is actually what causes also violence toward women. So we identified few friends, few sisters and brothers. Zainab is one of them. She immediately joined. So we formed a very little group on Twitter, and we were like sending messages, trying to identify what can we do. And our first action was on Saturday Shabbat. Maybe you heard about that. So we were all like, one of the members were shocked to hear Shabbat songs again in the radios after everything. I mean, after all the charge against him, it was something we were all like, between friends, we were like shocked to hear that. But no one decided to just say collectively, basta. We just want to hear this one. It's not fair, and it's not appropriate for a media, for a radio station, to continue spreading this music, knowing what happened. So we just decided, we organized everything. We were like exchanging messages a few days before, deciding for a perfect moment with a large audience on Twitter, usually in the afternoon, and started to anticipate the arguments against us and find answers to these arguments. So we had all set. We decided for a hashtag, everything was set, and we started. Tuesday, 2 p.m., we started tweeting. And we were 12. And immediately, it went viral. And a lot of people were like, reading our tweets, were like, okay, I agree with them, but I never felt that I was at any like environment where I can say this. So people started to join and to tweet, and it went viral. And after that, the same day, a radio announced that they will no longer diffuse his songs. Another one also. So we had very positive feedback after our first action. After that, we initiated other actions. So I'm not going to take a long time, because what we really want here is not for you to skip, so for you to share with us also your stories. We are preparing an action next Saturday. It is called Ilat Sarsafa, which means if he harass you, just whistle. And we're going to share whistles. We took some for you here. We're going to share that with you. We are calling women and men and small groups to just organize in all the cities of the country and just give gifts. This costs 1 dirham. And can allow a woman to just make a lot of noise after a harassment. And this is what we want. We don't want them to stay silent after an harassment, because this is an aggression. This is a violence. So what we want is to make a lot of noise, to completely change the situation. We are ashamed when we take a public transportation or when we are on the streets. When we see these, very ugly comments, we are ashamed and we continue. This is not. They have to be ashamed. They have to be ashamed, and we have to let them know that what they do is wrong. And actually, it's just something that is, common in our societies. What we want is just to say, okay, this is not normal. This is something that is punishable by law. And what we want is for everyone to know that, and everyone to make it clear that it is not acceptable. So I hope you will all join us on Saturday for this action.
Maria. Is it okay?
Je sais
vraiment trop de quoi commencer parce que je ne me suis pas du tout préparée et je m'attends vraiment à un échange plutôt qu'un speech. J'ai vraiment envie qu'on discute ensemble, donc je vais vous dire vraiment très peu de choses.
C'est juste que... traduction aussi.
Oh, bien sûr, donc ça va être...
So can you hear me without me doing a microphone? Is that all right? So Maria says she really wasn't planning on making a speech. She really wants to have a discussion, so she didn't have anything prepared in advance, but she'll say just a few things to you.
Parce que je pense pas que quoi que ce soit qu'on vous dira ce soir vous soit étrange.
I don't think anything we're going to say to you this evening is going to be strange to you. It's going to be something new.
Vous savez tous de quoi il s'agit.
You all know what this is about.
Et je pense que l'erreur de notre génération, c'est qu'on a cru que les femmes qui ont lutté pendant les années 60,
I think that the error of our generation is that we thought that the women who struggled so during the 60s,
on a cru que ce qu'elles ont pu acquérir était acquis.
We thought that what they had fought to achieve was achieved.
Sauf qu'on se rend compte vraiment avec le vécu que ce n'est pas du tout acquis et que c'est quelque chose qu'il faut défendre tous les jours.
And we see that in what we live and experience, it's not achieved, and it's something we still have to fight for every day.
Que le fait d'être une femme, c'est quelque chose qu'on doit porter.
The fact that you're a woman, it's something that you have to carry.
Je viens du monde de l'art.
I come from the world of art.
Et c'est un monde où la liberté est absolue.
And it's a world where liberty is absolute.
La vie quotidienne ici me rappelle tous les jours que ça n'est pas le cas.
I remember each day of daily life here reminds me that that is not the case in life.
Que tous les jours, je dois rappeler, quand je suis dans la rue, que mon intégrité physique doit se respecter.
That every day I have to remind myself when I'm in the street that my physical being must be respected.
Que c'est pas parce que je suis dehors le soir, parce que j'ai envie de sortir m'amuser, que j'ai bu un verre de trop, que quelqu'un a le droit d'abuser de moi.
It's not because I've decided that I want to go out at night, and even if I've had maybe one drink too much, that someone has the right to abuse me.
Je dis les choses vraiment de manière crue parce qu'il faut qu'on parle le langage de notre époque. On ne se casse pas les
I'm
choses.
saying things rather
Okay.
crassly because I feel like we need to tell things as they are now.
Voilà, j'ai pas beaucoup plus à vous dire, mais vraiment les filles...
Okay. Sure.
Hi, my name is Zainab. I hijacked this round table.
We're so glad
Let's
you
start
did.
there. Thank you so much for adding me to the discussion. I will start by saying that I'm actually a survivor of male violence. So everything through Mesektash before and after has been a process. I think I would like to talk about Mesektash and what it has accomplished, but offered actually to people and women particularly in terms of a space for women to express themselves. And it continues to open up these pathways, and they continue to multiply. And I just want to thank all of my sisters and brothers at Mesektash for that. I think this space is precious. I think not only should we defend it, as Maria says, I think that it is our job to push the walls on the sides and continue pushing for bigger spaces and larger and wider audiences, and welcome in men and women to speak about this. When I encountered the news, I was in Washington D.C. with my family, and I read about what happened to Haifa. And you know, as a survivor, this is a massive trigger, and not only that, but it also it's a calling for anyone to just say something and amplify her voice. And when the action regarding Saad Mujarrad was launched by Masaktash, I thought it was very important because the voices of the survivors, they're not victims, survivors, were not amplified, and yet we were amplifying the voice of perpetrator and assailant. And so, you know, speaking about that was of utmost importance. It was the priority, and I'm just really, really honored to be part of a group that will stand up and say something and not be silent. And as for the action on Saturday, it's very important to flip the script where it should be flipped, because women have been carrying the weight of horrendous actions that are triggered by male violence, just disgusting male violence, and somehow women carry the shame. And that is not only unfair, it is time to just say enough is enough. And so, you know, let's make symbolically and literally make our voices heard. So we're looking forward to the Saturday. Thank you for having us.
Can everybody hear me? Should we bring this closer? So I'd like to talk to you about my point of view covering these issues. So I have throughout my career written extensively on women's rights in Morocco and elsewhere, and I've interviewed countless victims of sexual violence, but not only, all kinds of violence. But what I always found really interesting is how the media covers these things, and it has evolved over the years, and it is a learning process for everyone, and I think it was really changed in the last couple of years, because as Zineb said earlier, we started amplifying the voices of survivors in a very unique way, in a way that's never been done before. So to go back to the Khadija case, I don't normally cover news. I'm more of a feature reporter, so I work on stories for a long time. And I wasn't going to cover this initially, just one other horrific story happening in Morocco. There are many that we hear about every day. But what really caught my attention on this case was the way the media were covering it, which was really outrageous and just wrong. And as we often say, I mean, there was a huge debate about this on social media, which was, a lot of journalists were justifying the way they were covering the Khadija story by saying, oh, we're giving a voice to every side. But the issue is that journalism is not about just writing what people tell you without any due diligence. As someone beautifully said once on Twitter, is journalism, it's not if someone tells you it rains and someone tells you it's dry, to quote both people. Your job is to go outside and find out what the weather is like. And that's kind of, so Khadija happens, at first I see this, I'm horrified, like, it made my stomach sick to see the pictures. And then the counter-narrative emerges. And I noticed Leila's account on Twitter, and that's how we connected on Twitter, and she was on the ground, and she knew what was happening, and she was informing me, and I decided that I had to write about this, but not just like a lot of news outlets were doing it, where they were just repeating about everything they were hearing. So you had all these truths and counter-truths, and it was just a huge mess. And I thought, okay, I'm only going to write what I saw, what I see, what I read, and I'm not writing about anything else. And I'm giving a chance to this woman to express herself in an unfiltered way. And I think it's really important to pay attention to these things when you read the media. You always pay attention to, did they quote an anonymous source? Did they actually take the time to read the police report? Did they take the time to verify their information? And all of that is the way, I mean, the horrific way the media covered this case, just in a way brutalized this teenager a second time. Because everyone was calling her a liar without any ground. They were just quoting people without verifying anything. And there's always some sort of due diligence you can do. If people make claims, they need to back up their claims. They need to show you text messages or emails, or have another witness kind of support what they say. You don't just destroy someone's reputation just based on what a person says. So just to go back to violence against women, there's a lot to do. There's still so much the media needs to learn about how they write about these things, because anything that's in the media will shape the way people think. And I do think Morocco has a pretty amazing civil society in the sense that whenever something happens, let's say the girl who was assaulted on the bus, you probably all know about this, or the Khadija story or so on, people really get outraged in a way that's very incredible in Morocco. People really react to these things. They don't just not care when it happens. But then we need the step after that, after the outrage. How does the media cover it? How do people take responsibility for these things? How do judges actually apply the law? And so on and so forth. So the conversation is pretty big, and there's still a lot to do.
Thank you, Aida, and thank you all, Masaktash representatives. We're going to shift gears for just a minute and listen to Sufyan Saoudi, who will present, I think, in Arabic. And Miriam, you're going to translate for him. He needs the microphone. If we can pass that mic down to him. Or maybe actually Miriam needs it so that we can hear her. That's probably what we need to do. Okay, you're like me. Okay. Good. Masaktash. Okay, let's go.
السلام عليكم. المهم العربية غنتكلم لكم على المشروع ديالنا او المبادرة ديالنا اللي هي سمع صوتك. هذه المبادرة هذه كانت بدات تقريبا في شهر جوج من 2018. الفكرة ديال المبادرة بدات يعني او جات من بعد الفضيحة ديال جامعة عبد الملك السعدي اللي كان
Okay, so this is a project which is called سمعي صوتك, Women Make Your Voice Heard. It's a project for women to use technology for the purpose of advocacy in cases of violence against women. And as you said, it started, or the idea of the project came after the case known as Sex for Grades. Yes?
الفكرة ديال المبادرة جات من بعد الفضيحة ديال الأستاذ ديال جامعة عبد الملك السعدي في القضية اللي معروفة بالجنس مقابل اللقاء. من تما جاتنا الفكرة يعني كيفاش نخليو البنات أنهم يتكلموا على العنف اللي كيتعرضوا ليه أو التحرش أو الابتزاز الجنسي باستخدام التكنولوجيا اللي متوفرة عندهم في التليفونات ديالهم أو البيسيات.
Okay, so the idea of the project came after the case known as Sex for Better Grades that sparked a scandal whose champion was a university professor who used sexual extortion of female students and pushed them to have sex with him in return for granting them better grades in the subject taught by the Faculty of Science at the University of Abdul Malik Saadi in Tetouan. So, yes, I mean, I will.
خصوصا ان الاحصائيات كتبين بان المغرب كيعرف نسب كبيره من العنف ضد النساء، من بينها ان 63% من النساء كيتعرضوا للعنف سنويا، وهذه من الاحصائيات اللي خرجت في 2015. وهذه من الحوايج اللي خلتنا كذلك اننا نتبناو هذه الفكره ديال المبادره.
Like this story could have been like many stories that would have been hidden. So I'm actually, I'm translating the slides. That would have been hidden had it not been blown up by hackers who broke into the accounts of this professor. A larger group of female students admitted that they haven't been harassed and blackmailed. Their fear of the professor's exploitation of his position against them caused their silence. This is one of the many cases that have been forgotten in Moroccan society, in which a large proportion of women suffers from sexual harassment and violence in all its forms. And according to the annual report of the National Observatory on Violence Against Women, more than 63% of women are subject to violence every year.
الفكرة ديال سمع صوتك هي بالأساس جات لكسر جدار الصمت، والفكرة ديال المشروع أنها جاءت لإتاحة فرصة للفتيات للتحدث عن حالات العنف اللي كيتعرضوا لها من خلال ثلاثة ديال النقاط اللي هي ورشات تدريبية ديال التشجيع مع التكلم والتبليغ على حالات العنف. واستخدام التكنولوجيا لفتح هذه الممارسات وكذلك انشاء منصه الكترونيه باش نشروا فيها القصص ديال هاد النساء.
So make your voice, woman, make your voice heard has a purpose, which is to break the wall of silence, and the project is an opportunity for young women, فتيات والنساء. ليس فقط الفتيات. Is an opportunity for young women and adult women, to talk about the violence they are experiencing through first training workshops, to encourage them to speak and report, use technology to expose these practices, and mobilize local and international public opinion, and create an electronic platform to publish their stories.
بالنسبه للورشه التدريبيه حاليا درناهم 5 ديال المدن المغربيه. اول مدينه بدينا بها هي مدينه تيفنت اللي هي كنحضر منها انايا واللي هي اللي بدات منها هذه المبادره هذه. وهي مدينه يعني بالنسبه للناس اللي كيعرفوها شي واحد مدينه صغيره مهمشه جات ما بين الرباط والخميسات وكتعرف نسب حتى هي ديال التحرش وعنف ضد النساء.
So these training workshops are implemented in several Moroccan cities. One of them is Tifelt, which is a marginal small city that is known for its high rates of violence against women.
كذلك درنا فورماسيون في الرباط والقنيطره.
Okay, so these training workshops, they took place also in Rabat and Kenitra,
وطنجه.
Tangier,
واخر مدينه كنا فيها تقريبا قبل اسبوع هي الخميسات.
and Khmisat.
وقريبا عندنا ورشه اخرى اللي تكون في مدينه تطوان.
And then
اللي هي اصلا بدات منها القضيه اللي بنينا عليها المشروع.
And soon other training workshops will take place in Tetuan, the city where the case of the professor burst out.
بالنسبه للتكنولوجيا اللي كنستخدموا حاليا في المشروع ديالنا هي التكنولوجيا ديال البودكاست. يعني كنعلموا الفتيات والنساء كيفاش يستخدموا التكنولوجيا ديال البودكاست انهم يحكيوا القصص ديالهم من خلال هذه التقنيه.
So one of the newer technologies is podcasting, which is to train participants on mechanisms of media production committed to issues of violence and harassment, and offer solutions to address the problem. And to take advantage of modern technology.
بالنسبه للقصص اللي كينتجوا هاد الفتيات كنحطوها في منصه ديال ساوند كلاود وكذلك يعني كنحطوها في الموقع ديالنا باش كنفتحوا النقاش حول هذا الموضوع. والفكره ديال المشروع اننا ماشي فقط ان كنطرحوا المشاكل بل كذلك حتى البحث عن حلول من خلال النقاش اللي كتفتح حول هذه القضايا.
So women, they can use, it's for an open discussion. They use, blogging on the subject of sexual harassment, and and also to find solutions to the problem, to share solutions to the problem.
بالنسبه هذا هو الموقع باقي في النسخه التجريبيه ديالنا.
So this is an experimental, edition of the project.
سميتو سمعي صوتك .com. الموقع اللي درنا او المنصه هي كتوفر على يعني كتوفر القصص المنتجه من طرف المستفيدات من المشروع والمعارف ديالهم. كذلك انها خلينا منصه لتقديم المساعده والرد على الاسئله ديال الناس اللي كيدخلوا لهذا الموقع. وكذلك حاليا كنزيدوا يعني ارقام هواتف مراكز الاستماع اللي يقدروا يستافدوا منها هاد النساء وحتى العناوين ديالها. وكذلك يعني معلومات عن طرق التبليغ ومعلومات قانونيه لضمان سلامه المبلغات يعني عن حالات العنف. وكيتوفر كذلك على منتدى للنقاش وطرح المشاكل المحليه.
So this digital platform includes the following: stories produced by can we call them beneficiaries, المستفيدات, and their acquaintances, a platform to offer support and answer questions, telephone numbers and addresses of help centers or listening centers in Arabic, help centers, ways of reporting and legal information to ensure the safety of the women who reported on the assaults, and it is also a forum for discussion and for posing problems and solutions.
بعض يعني التجارب المتعلقه بالمشروع يعني المشروع كنا عرضناه في واحد المؤتمر في الجامعه الامريكيه في بيروت التنظيم ديال يونيسيف، يعني حتى لان في المشروع ديالنا كنخدموا حتى مع المراهقات او اليافعات كيفاش حتى هما يبلغوا على حالات العنف اللي كيتعرضوا ليه.
Okay, so here we have, I think there are some pictures from a presentation of the success story of the projects in a conference organized by UNICEF at the American University in Beirut.
وقريبا يعني يوم 19 من هذا الشهر هذا غادي نكونوا كذلك في ستراسبورغ في فرنسا باش نعرضوا التجربه ديال المشروع ديالنا في المنتدى العالمي للديمقراطيه.
Okay, on the 19th of this month, the project, there will be a presentation of the project success story will be presented at the World's Democracy Forum in Strasbourg.
بالنسبه لتنفيذ المشروع كان هو يعني عن طريق العمل مع عده شركاء، لان في كل مدينه كنمشيو ليها كيخصنا يكون عندنا شركاء من جمعيات محليه او منظمات اللي كيسهلوا لنا يعني الاجراءات باش نديروا الورشات التدريبيه. والمشروع كذلك ممول في المرحله الاولى تمول من المعهد الجمهوري الدولي، وحاليا كيتمول من المؤسسه الاورو المتوسطيه لدعم المدافعين عن حقوق الانسان، وكيتنفذ من طرف مبادره ياس.
So here we have, names of funders and partners, people who believed in this project. Yes.
Okay.
That's it. Thank you.
We have some questions that our organizers would like to pose to the panelists. عندنا شي سؤال بغينا نسولكم شي شوية. First of all, the current status in Morocco around sexual harassment and sexual violence. I mean, we have our own ideas of what the situation is. What can you tell us through your expertise about the status of sexual violence and sexual harassment in Morocco?
It is actually very difficult to have a perfect and clear vision of the current situation. We have one study that have been done in 2009, for which the methodology is to be discussed, but at least it's a work that have been done on violence toward women. And you can find it online. You can find a lot of data. Well, what it says is basically we don't need to go too much into details. But what it says is that the situation is clearly catastrophic. The number of women who recognize having been faced violence during the past year is something like more than 60%. I think it's more than that, but that's the actual statistics. The number of women facing sexual violence is around 25 to 30%. I don't remember exactly. So the situation is very. But what we try to do and what we believe in is that behind all these statistics and figures and numbers and data, we all need to agree on something that is very simple and basic. The simple thing here is that we are equal. Mm-hmm. We are equal, and it is not because we just say that we are these feminists. It's cool to be feminist today, so it is important to be feminist today, and it is necessary to be feminist today. What we feel, we have all around us stories of sisters, friends, women we meet in the streets. It's all around us. It's here. We don't need these studies and data to tell us more about the situation. The situation is clearly catastrophic, and it's not only in Morocco. It is something that is universal. When you talk to feminists in the US, in Europe, in Paris, in Africa, in Senegal, it's all over the world. We are not here living something that is extraordinary or that is unique. It is not linked to Islam, to the Muslim world, or to being an Arab or being in Africa or whatever. We are all facing the same problem. Then you were telling us about the US, and I mean, the kind of speech that justify this difference of treatment between men and women, you can find it everywhere. It is exactly the same rationale behind it. So the numbers, we can not agree on numbers or discuss numbers, but they don't tell us anything. What we need to just be aware of is that we are equal. And we need to fight for it, and it is necessary, it is important, and as long as we are remaining quiet about it, or just, being bored, because it needs some energy every day to find that, right? It's when you are going into conversations with a brother, a friend, these feminists, these sexist remarks, it's on our daily life. So we need a lot of energy to just every time tell them, okay, no, this is not, I don't agree with you. But we need to find it, not only for us, we need to do it for us, we need to do it for our friends, we need to do it for our sisters, we need to do it for our kids, and we just need to do it because it's the right thing to do. So the current situation is really problematic. It is the case all around the globe. And as long as we are not conscious about this very simple thing that we are equal, it will remain the same.
I'd like to add to what Leila says. One thing that you've all heard. You've all heard about the violence against women law that was passed this year.
And that's something else we would like you guys to
Yeah,
talk
sure,
about with
sure.
us and,
So that was an interesting process that I kind of followed over the years. So women's rights group in Morocco have done a lot of lobbying for laws to change. So you first had a reform in 2004, and something that I think is not discussed enough when we talk about the reform of the family code, the Mudawana, is that it only happened really because women's rights groups have been fighting for this reform for decades. It's not something that was just granted from the top to the population. It was something that women's rights groups have asked for so long. And then after that, they asked for reforms of the law, and one of them was violence against women's bill. And Tunisia, for instance, has a very good violence against women's bill that could have been an example for Moroccans to follow. And after years of conversation with the Justice Department, with the Justice Department, I'm not in the US, with the Ministry of Justice, with the Ministry of Women's Rights and so on. Do you all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry. So with the Ministry of Women's Rights and all of that, there was all this conversation about what do we do. Women's rights group in Morocco went to Geneva, I don't know how many times, to advocate for this bill and so on. And in the end, they thought it was pretty incomplete. One of the reasons it didn't criminalize domestic rape and among other things. But what I thought was really interesting was there's this think tank / NGO in Rabat called MRA, Mobilizing Rights Associates, who do incredible work with lobbying. They're 2 lawyers who kind of brainstorm and follow everything that's done around the law. And they did this survey where they asked every NGO who lobbied over the years how many times members of parliament returned their phone calls, how many times they returned their emails, how many times they were just communicating with NGOs. And the results of this survey are really, really, really staggering. We just found out that most of the people you vote for don't answer the phone, don't talk to NGOs, or as a matter of fact, they voted for a law they didn't care to talk to NGOs about or talk to women about. And I think that's really important because I don't know if you vote or not, it's all personal, but people you vote for, people you're taxed
the taxpayers pay for, just don't care about these issues, and they need to be held accountable. They vote for laws. They vote for laws that impact women's lives, and they're just not involved. I mean, I don't know if they even attend the sessions of the parliament. I don't know if they even, maybe they just go to vote. They don't even read what they're voting for. But that's all something that civil society needs to care about and to find out who you vote for, who represents you in the parliament, how do they care about the issues you care about. And there needs to start being this culture of accountability towards people, towards lawmakers, actually.
If I can just add something.
If you can use the microphone, do, because it's better for the recording.
Okay.
But we heard you loud and clear.
Okay.
No. So, I'd like to answer your question with another question to everyone in this room. Who in this room is a female and was harassed in the streets, for instance? Raise your hand.
Like ever?
Yeah, like ever. Okay.
So that I feel
That
like
survey is representative. Yeah, me too, actually. But I think it says a lot, and I won't put anyone on the spot, but chances are there are people who have dealt with other sorts of male violence as well. And so the idea that, it's important to substantiate everything. And I understand, and I think that's one of the biggest problems that we are facing when there are reports of rape, when a woman actually, gathers enough pieces of herself after being subjected to such violence and decides to go report. Reporting one of the most underreported crimes out there. When women actually have had enough and they go to report, look what society puts them through. Okay, and it's enough that most women raise their hands in the room. This isn't something that we can deny. This isn't something that women deserve to go through a second and a third and a fourth hell, and some of us go through perpetual hells just dealing and seeing how many other women go through this hell. So I think it's very, very important to put women up front and center, and I think there should be due process that, with credibility, that kind of addresses this massive problem that you have to substantiate everything, and then going through these processes and dealing with people along the way who don't believe you, regardless of what you say, and dealing with men along the way who themselves are perpetrators and assailants, and dealing with just this long line of processes that I think can be very damaging and harmful. It doesn't really help fixing the issue. So yeah, I think the state of the situation in Morocco and everywhere is horrible. And I think it should be addressed, and I think step one is just opening spaces for expression.